Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Chroma in Warframe in 2019. Now, Chroma is a very basic character. He, first and foremost, is somebody who can soak up a lot of damage and deal a lot of damage. He's a tank and spank. He's primarily used in Eidolon runs and Orb Hunter runs, so that's pretty much all I use him for, but you can use him in the likes of a defense or a survival just to, tank and spank, really. That's what the character is. There's a multitude of different ways to build him, and how you build him is entirely down to you, honestly. I would say that you want to focus most on power strength and then have duration as your next prioritized stat, and then the rest is kind of down to personal preference. Now, you want to invest a little bit into your defenses, throw on a health mod or something here and there, but other than that, it's mainly your power strength and also your duration. Different amounts of duration depending on the type of player that you are. In some cases, I like to sacrifice duration for efficiency, especially if I'm playing with a newer group in an Eidolon run, for example, if I'm teaching them. So my builds are catered more towards efficiency than they are duration in some cases, and you'll see that whenever I do show you my builds, but you don't necessarily have to follow suit. I would just, if you're playing with like a group who knows what they're doing, stack duration, stack power strength, and then that is pretty much it. Chroma's got some unique stats going about him, with the passive of being able to swap up what some of your abilities do based on the element that it matches. So if you're running things like white, black, for example, on your energy color, then you're going to get ice, and then ice is going to give you bonus armor on your elemental ward. If you're running the likes of a blue or a purple, you're going to get electric, and then that's going to give you bonus shields. If you're running anything that resembles fire, so red, orange, yellow, you're going to get extra health. And then if you're running something that resembles toxin, then you're going to get extra reload speed, which is actually something that I'm quite interested in, this being a tank and spank character, because his second and third ability giving you that damage buff. I would be interested in testing out how much damage or DPS I can get with a reload centric build with Chroma as well. So that'll be cool to test out someday, but for now I just focused around that bonus armor because I want to stay alive in my Orb Hunter runs and my Eidolon runs and stuff like that. So having that bonus armor on there is definitely something that I gravitate towards. So let's take a look at my builds. I have two different Chromas. One has Prime Sure-Footed on for the Orb Hunter fight, just to sort of like, optimally run that without getting knocked over, but you don't necessarily need that. You can throw on something like Handspring, like I have on this build, for example. But like I said, builds on Chroma, definitely personal preference. Now, this would be the build that I think I would recommend to people, because this is the one that has a decent balance, in my opinion, between strength and duration, right? So we have 323% strength, which is just the high stat, which is going to give us a higher bonus on our fury stat, right? Which is the damage buff that you get whenever you take damage to your health, because that's how this guy works. The more damage you take, the stronger your buffs become. So you're going to get more armor when you cast your free if you're taking damage to your shields, but then if you're taking damage directly to your health, then you're going to deal more damage. And the damage buff works a little bit like the Serration mod, right? So it's just 165% of your total damage, or whatever you can get that stat up to. It goes pretty high. I haven't played Chroma in a while, so I don't know the numbers of my buffs off by heart. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ability screen on Vex Armor. So damage increase. So with this particular build, it can go up to 888%. So that is basically an 888% serration on that ability whenever we take enough damage to get to that stat. So you're going to be running stealth damaging weapons. You're not going to be running that on the primary. You're going to be running that on your secondary or on your melee. So you could use something like a glaive. You could use the Haiku with the explosive mods on, concealed explosives. You could run talons, anything like that, which you can use to deal damage to yourself, self damage. You're going to want to run it to get yourself to that maximum buff. You could even consider running the keys, which are just as your shields. If I can remember what it is, it's not bleeding. the decaying key. If you want to run the decaying key, you could use that to reduce your shield so you can get that damage buff up higher. Of course, then the trade-off is your armor buff isn't going to be as high, or it's going to be a lot harder to build up because you're just going to have less overall shields, right? So the idea of Chroma is to keep your 2 and your 3 active at all times. Your 1 and your 4 are complete throwaway abilities because they don't really do anything. Your 1 is just like Elemental Breath, which drains your energy over time. Your 4 strips away your armor, and then it leaves a cool floating dragon, which looks badass, don't get me wrong. But the drain on it is so high, and for the amount of damage that it deals, or the effects that it gives you, it just isn't worth it to have that, you know, constantly taken off. Because you have decreased armor, but increased speed here. Not really worth it unless you're trying to speedrun as Chroma. And as a frame that has like good base armor, you know, I can definitely see a playstyle being built around that, but I don't necessarily recommend it. He's far stronger if you're building around his Elemental Ward and Vex armor abilities. So just to give you more of a in-depth explanation of how that works. So Elemental Ward, depending on Chroma's element, alignment, and offensive area of effect is created. Chroma and its nearby allies are imbued with defensive energy. So that's one of the buffs that we're talking about. Depending on the energy color, it's going to be a different buff. So, you know, if it's fire, health, if it's electric, then it's going to be shields. If it's armor, or if it's ice, then it's going to be armor. And then if it's toxin, it's going to be reload speed. So that's going to let that happen, and then have elemental effects and stuff around you as well. And then we have our Vex armor, which is whenever your shields are hit, your armor is going to get buffed. And whenever your health is hit, then you're going to get that bonus damage, right? Which works exactly like Serration. So whenever we go to mod our Rubico, if we're running an Eidolons, for example, we actually mod it a little bit differently. I can't speak. We don't run Serration because our ability basically replaces it, right? So if we were to add on more elemental mods, we're going to get more damage that way because of how the Fury buff, or our Vex armor buff, the damage buff from Vex armor, how that interacts with elemental mods. It works in a similar way to Serration, but because that Serration bonus is higher, then we don't have to mod for Serration, meaning if we just throw on an element, then the total output of damage at the end is going to be a lot higher because we're throwing on more elements, right? So let's say, for example, we were shooting an enemy that had alloy armor, which is what I'm going to be testing against. They take more damage from radiation and more damage from cold, right? So radiation is 75%, and then cold is 25%. So we threw on, you know, our radiation damage to get that 75% bonus radiation, and then we throw on our cold to get that 25% bonus cold, and in that way we get more damage at the end because we have that Fury buff and those elemental buffs on, well, elemental buffs, quote unquote, elemental damage bonuses on, if we weren't running Serration on our build, right? If that makes any sense. So that is kind of the simplest way I can explain it to you. But with all that being said, let's try Chroma. I need to throw on a weapon that I can use to damage myself. I'm just going to go ahead and use the Talons because explosive. Okay. So we get our energy. We spawn in our alloy armored enemies. So that's our bombards. Let's go ahead and pause the AI. Keep them paused. Now, the thing is, you don't get a damage bonus on paused AI using the likes of a primary weapon or secondary weapon. Common misconception. I know, all that jazz. But let's go ahead, cast our Vex armor. Let's see. Okay, so we took a little bit of health damage there. See, I don't want to take too much because I realize I don't have vitality on this build. So we have that 888% Fury buff. Now, if we jump to the bad guys, this lasts for 55 seconds, by the way. So that's really, really good. And then there you go. Insane damage numbers on there. And they all get one shot. That guy, he tanked it. They all get one shot pretty much. And they die very, very fast. So these are alloy armored enemies. So they're going to take bonus damage from rad and cold. And then if you're shooting the likes of an Eidolon, for example, then it would pretty much be the same case. Another thing that you want to do is running Arcane Momentum. You can probably see that on the top right hand of my screen too. Arcane Momentum is going to give you a faster reload speed on critical hit with snipers. And what you do in that scenario is you build combos. You can see there at the bottom of my screen, it's a shot combo. You just want to build that up by constantly shooting at the enemies. And the higher that is, the more damage you're going to be dealing. So that's why you run that Arcane Momentum, to build that combo up. It's kind of like, you your melee combo counter in a sense, just for snipers and aiming down sights. The higher your multiplier is, the more damage you're going to be dealing overall, and you want to get it as high as possible. So whenever the Eidolon is in its healing phase or whatever, we just lay into the limb to build that combo while it's doing its restorative stuff, right? And you'd build it as much as you can, and then whenever it does become vulnerable to your damage, then you're going to one-shot it because you have such a high combo counter. You've got the Vex armor buff built up, and you should be constantly refreshing that, by the way. So let's just go ahead and build it up again. So that's actually lasting logging in 55 seconds, my mistake. So you can refresh it, just hit it again, and we can see that mine's last 69 seconds. So you don't have to wait for that 69 seconds on this build that I'm showing you to run out before you cast it again. You can keep the buff, you're 888% stacked up already, by just recasting the ability, and you won't have to self-damage yourself again. So that's pretty cool. You can't do that with Elemental Ward. You have to wait for Elemental Ward's duration to run out. That doesn't matter too much, though, if you're doing the likes of Eidolons or Orb Hunter. You just want to keep your free up. Your free is your most important ability. You could get away with not using your second ability whatsoever. It's just the kind of nice to have turned on. So it's really up to you. I would recommend bringing a lot of like energy resource and stuff like that just to keep yourself topped off on energy, because he is a very inefficient frame, which means he's going to take a lot of energy to cast those abilities, because you're going to be using the likes of Blind Rage in all your builds and stuff like that. So, you know, if you want that highest strength stat and you want that highest damage buff, because highest damage buff, because he is, you know, just a damage buffing frame, right? And that's kind of his thing. That's his go-to. So you don't necessarily have to build your Rubico like this. You can definitely get away with just using Serration and building normally. You know, instead of having Prime Cryo rounds, having Serration on there. Totally fine. 110% fine. So if you don't want to get another Rubico to completely mess up your build, understandable. You don't have to do it. You can even use the Lanka, for example, and get the same effects. It's just, you know, the Rubico or Rubico Prime is hit scan, where the Lanka is projectile. So the idea is that it's hit scan, the shot applies immediately, where with projectile weapons there's more opportunity to miss, and you know, you're not applying the damage immediately whenever you click, because you have to wait for the travel time and stuff like that. So using the Rubico Prime is more efficient, right? So that's kind of the dealio with that, but either option is definitely a-okay. And I promise to show you guys my other Chroma Prime here with the Prime Sure-Footed, because, you know, this is my 306 duration, less strength. There's so many different ways to build Chroma. This one's just for the Orb Hunter. The Orb Hunter, you don't have to deal as much damage to him to take him down, which is why I kind of left out the strength a little bit and went more for the duration, because that's kind of a annoying fight to, I guess, re-damage yourself, you know? So having max duration on there definitely was more appealing to me, because you have to cycle through all the different elemental stages on the boss and whatnot. So just not having to upkeep my abilities was more appealing, right? So that is pretty much that. That's how you play Chroma for your Eidolon hunts and stuff like that. I would play him the exact same way in the likes of a defense mission or survival mission, just going full on tank and spank, keeping that what's it called, the Fury buff up as long as I can. And that is pretty much it, guys. So if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video after I fix the coloring on my Chroma, because I haven't done that yet. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.